Hey guys, Cam here from Pocket-lint, and OnePlus and Oppo are two very closely linked companies. They're both part of the same smartphone family, and that means they release phones that are very similar to each other. Now for 2020, those two new phone series are the OnePlus 8 series and the Oppo Find X2. The flagships of those ranges are the 8 Pro and the Find X2 Pro. So how similar are they, and does the Oppo justify its higher price tag? Let's find out. So look at these two phones side by side and it's clear they're cut from the same cloth. The physical dimensions are virtually the same when it comes to height and width, and holding them in the hand it's clear that the Oppo is thicker, at least when comparing the vegan leather option to OnePlus's glass phone. They're virtually the same weight too, plus or minus a few grams, but the feel in the hand is vastly different, at least when you compare this vegan leather model. It feels soft and comfortable. Personally, I prefer that feel to the frosted glass, but that's just my own personal taste. As glass backs go, the matte frosted glass on the OnePlus 8 Pro is one of the nicest feeling phones on the market. Looks-wise, they both have their charm. I like the symmetry of the OnePlus 8 Pro's camera system, and that glacial green finish is one of the nicest to ever grace the back of a phone. I must say though that while it doesn't easily show fingerprints, it is much harder to clean when it does get them, because of course that fake leather back on the Oppo just doesn't pick them up at all, so you never have to worry about it. Now they're both water and dust resistant to the same IP68 rating, so you don't gain anything on that front with either device. But OnePlus's alert switch on the right edge shouldn't be overlooked. It makes switching between vibrate and silent and ring modes really simple. And then we come around to the front, and this is when it becomes clear that they're very similar phones. The screen is pretty much exactly the same size and shape and has the same bezels and the same single hole punch in the top corner. And since we're there, let's talk the displays. Looking at specs alone, it'd be easy just to say that they're both exactly the same and move on. And to some degree, that's true. But in daily use and looking at them side by side, the experience can be a tiny bit different. Both have the same Quad HD Plus resolution, built on an AMOLED panel with 120Hz refresh rate and HDR10 Plus support. But when you first switch them on, the Oppo screen can come across a bit too warm. But you can calibrate both displays, adjusting the color temperature, and it is possible to make them look pretty much the same. It's just the method and the settings menu for doing that is a tiny bit different on each phone. Both screens are very bright, very sharp, with plenty of detail and vivid color and lots of contrast. And with both of them featuring 120Hz refresh rates, animations are really smooth and fast, particularly on the user interface within the phone itself. For watching movies and gaming, these two phones are easily two of the best out right now. And software-wise, of course, there are differences in how the two phones operate. Despite both running versions of Android 10, they certainly organise their settings menus differently, but Oppo has made its Color OS much more lightweight than it used to be, and so even that gap is closing. Saying that, you can customise a lot more of the appearance on OnePlus's Oxygen OS, but Oppo's comes preloaded with much more attractive live wallpapers that really take advantage of that great display. Now switching to performance, and it is a similar story here as well. In daily use, switching between screens and loading apps in gaming, you'll have a speedy, lag-free experience on both phones. So that's not going to be a decision factor, even if the exact makeup of RAM is slightly different on the two phones. Oppo's comes with 12GB of RAM as standard, whereas OnePlus's starts at 8GB. Similar story in storage space, you get up to 512GB on Oppo's and a maximum of 256 with OnePlus. But these two phones are easily two of the fastest phones around, and to tell any difference between them you'd have to likely record it in slow motion and play it back, because they both use the same processor and they are both 5G. Now battery life and charging is a different story. This is where you start to see one of the biggest differences in daily use. OnePlus has a bigger battery with 4,510 mAh capacity, and Oppo has a dual cell design totaling 4,260 mAh. And it's dual cell for good reason. It enables the super fast charging. Oppo's SuperVOOC 2.0 65W charging can get it fully charged from flat in about half an hour. OnePlus's 30W Warp Charge 30T is still fast, but it is noticeably slower. It'll get you 50% charge in about 25 minutes, so clearly there's quite a big difference here. But then OnePlus gives you the convenience of having wireless charging as an option, and it does so at a 30W speeds as well, as long as you use OnePlus's own bespoke wireless charger. It's not as fast as using a cable, but it's much faster than pretty much all the other wireless chargers out there. And to be fair, with either phone you don't really have to plug them in that often. The battery performance on both phones is very good. Even on your busiest, most screen-intensive days, you should still get through to the end of the day and not have to charge your phone. OnePlus might just squeeze you an extra hour between charges, but there's really not much difference here. So we get to the camera department and another area where there is quite a big difference, but also some striking similarities. Oppo and OnePlus use pretty much the same hardware. Both devices use a 48 megapixel sensor in their primary and ultra-wide cameras. There's little difference in aperture between them, but again, they are similar. Saying that, I found that when taking similar photos with both phones, the OnePlus's images actually looked a little bit more vibrant and warmer, actually nicer. And then taking the Oppo closer up to smaller objects would automatically kick it into this macro mode, which uses the ultra-wide lens, and then that changes the framing and you have to reposition your hands. Whereas with OnePlus, if you want the macro mode, you have to switch it on manually. But if you like the more muted colours, then the Oppo delivers that. Where the big difference crops in, and pun not intended, is in the telephoto or zoom cameras. Oppo has its periscope-like zoom, which offers up to 5 times optical zoom, while OnePlus says it has 3 times hybrid zoom. Now, Oppo uses a higher resolution sensor on this one too, and so offers better, sharper images than OnePlus does when it's zoomed in. OnePlus does have this extra sensor called a photochromatic sensor, which does weird things with colours. We haven't really found a proper use for it, but it can be a little bit fun. And while the experience of using them might be slightly different due to software differences and a different approach to cameras and display tuning and fast charging, the key areas here are largely very similar between these two phones. So the decision for you might just come purely down to price and availability. OnePlus is easier to get hold of right now because it's properly launched in retail, and it's also cheaper than what the Oppo Find X2 Pro is going to cost. So which do you fancy? Let me know in the comments. And if you did like this video and you want to see more, please hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up. I've been Cam. I'm at Cam Bunton on Twitter and all the other important social media networks, and I'll see you again soon.